Hello, everybody, and today I will be talking about the college football playoff new rankings that just came out and how each of the teams can get into the playoff. First off, if we look at the rankings, we got Georgia number 1, Ohio State number 2, Alabama number 3, Cincinnati number 4, team up north number 5. Yes, I do have to use that terminology. The game is coming up, so I'm not going to say that word. Number 6 is Notre Dame, number 7 is Oklahoma State, 8 is Baylor, 9 is Ole Miss, and 10 is Oklahoma. I will be going over the playoff chances or the past for all these teams except for Baylor and Ole Miss because they both have 2 losses. So I don't think they'll get in any way possible unless college football decides that all these teams are going to lose a game or two in the final 2 weeks. First team up is Georgia. Georgia is close to the lock of the playoffs so far. Will have. They're one of 2 undefeated hopefuls. I mean, they're not really hopeful anymore. They're almost locked. One of 3 undefeated teams overall. UTSA is a group of 5 team, and they haven't played anyone, so they don't even have a shot. But basically, Georgia just has to win against Georgia Tech, which Georgia Tech's not that good, so it's possible that I don't see a possibility that Georgia Tech beats Georgia. I mean, if Georgia Tech beats them, Georgia should just disband its entire football operation over there. So, as long as they win against them, it doesn't really matter what happens at the SEC championship. It would basically be Alabama gets in or not at that point. My Ohio State Buckeyes. They got 2 hard matchups left. Of course, they got the game against the team up north, and then the Big Ten championship, which there's 3 teams that could be coming out of the West. It could be Wisconsin, Iowa, or Minnesota. Iowa would have to have Wisconsin lose, and then Minnesota would have to have both of them lose, and then Purdue win, which it's likely not going to happen. It likely will probably be Wisconsin or Iowa, probably Wisconsin. So whoever plays in the West will probably be a top 25 team, which would mean that Ohio State would have to win another 2 ranked games, and then they go playoff and play a ranked team, top 4. So, yeah, Ohio State has maybe one of the hardest couple games left. So, yeah. Next up is Alabama. Alabama's a 1-loss team. They must win against Auburn, no doubt about it. I mean, Auburn's I think they're a 5-loss team. They can't lose to them. If they lose to them, it's over. Must win against Auburn and either win versus Georgia or lose by a very slight margin with help. If Alabama wins against Auburn and wins against Georgia, they're a lock. If they win against Auburn and lose to Georgia by like 3 points, it could be interesting because you could be talking about which 2 do you put in? Do you put in of like 3 teams? Do you put in Alabama, Cincinnati, or the Big 12 champion, which will either be Oklahoma State or Oklahoma, unless something else happens and Baylor wins it. So, yeah, I think that's how Alabama is. They got a couple games that they gotta win, and maybe Georgia they could lose if they got some help with a Cincinnati loss and Big 12 messing themselves up and Notre Dame maybe losing, although I don't think that will happen. So, yeah. Cincinnati, the underdog of the season, a team that I have also been rooting for. I've been an Ohio State fan for my life time, but Cincinnati has definitely piqued my interest the last couple of years just because Ohio sports, I usually support the Ohio teams, so seeing Cincinnati being this high is so cool because now you got two Ohio teams that are pushing for a playoff and doing great. So Cincinnati must win out. Group of 5 team, you basically gotta go undefeated, and you must have a couple good wins. They got Notre Dame, who right now is 6. So as long as Notre Dame keeps up and wins against Stanford, Cincinnati will look really good. They can say, "Oh wow, look, we won against a top 6 team. Shouldn't we be in the top 4?" So they gotta win out. They're one of the 2 undefeateds. Helps if Georgia destroys Alabama. Like, we are talking maybe a couple touchdowns, because that would push Alabama completely out. So you'd have Ohio State, Georgia, Cincinnati, and then the Big 12 champion, or either the Big 12 champion or Notre Dame, but I think they would pick the Big 12 champion just because the extra game. So if Georgia destroys Alabama, that would be a big help. If the Big Ten East team loses in the championship, so basically whoever wins the game, if they lose in the Big Ten championship game against probably Wisconsin, basically that would push both Ohio State and the team up north out, which would be a big clearing. And then if the Big 12 messes itself up with Oklahoma and Oklahoma State this weekend, if whoever wins that game loses the next game, whether it is in a rematch because of how the Big 12 is, or whether it is against Baylor, either way, if a 2-loss team is the one that wins the Big 12 championship, then that would be absolutely huge because that kicks out another conference. So you could have a situation where Ohio State, team up north, Oklahoma State, and Oklahoma is all out of it. So that leaves you Georgia, Cincinnati, Notre Dame, maybe commit, and then maybe a 2-loss Alabama. I don't know, but Alabama would be 4th in that situation. So we gotta do the team up north, I guess. I got the when I wrote this down, I literally had TUN and an AM with the slash through it. So yeah, they gotta win out. Though again, they got about the same path as Ohio State. They gotta win again. Gotta win the game, and then they gotta win the Big Ten championship. And I know that Team Up North is not exactly in the playoff right now because they are currently the 5th team. But once you beat, if they have a miracle and win against Ohio State, they'll be in the top 4 because Ohio State would drop and stuff, and Big Ten would probably, they would probably jump over Cincinnati in that situation. So Notre Dame, Notre Dame's an interesting case because they don't play a conference championship game because they aren't in the conference, which could actually hurt them here because they have 1 loss and they could have definitely be in this if they were in a conference. So what's the standpoint on Notre Dame? Well, they gotta win against Stanford. Absolutely important. They need a Cincinnati loss, which may or may not happen, I don't know. Georgia destroys Alabama in the SEC championship game. Again, a couple touchdowns would help. Big Ten has champ has 2 losses. So again, whoever wins the game loses in the Big Ten championship game. And then the Big 12 champ has 2 losses. So if it's Oklahoma, Oklahoma State, or Baylor, whoever wins, they gotta have 2 losses. And if all those things happen, Notre Dame would probably be in, because that kicks out a lot of people. I mean, you're talking about kicking out Alabama, Ohio State, team up north, Oklahoma State, and Oklahoma. So you'd have Georgia, Notre Dame, maybe the two lost Big 12 champ, and then maybe Alabama in that situation. But anyway, Notre Dame would probably benefit and be in, probably as a second or third team in that playoff situation. So yeah. Oklahoma State. I didn't expect this team to go for a playoff like this. But now that I look at it, they got a pretty good shot. Though the games will be tough. So they got a win versus Oklahoma and win versus the Big 12 championship. If Baylor wins this weekend and Oklahoma State wins, it'd be Oklahoma State versus Baylor. Just how things go. And then Oklahoma so Oklahoma State has to win those 2 games, and because of how important the championship games are, it'd probably likely be favored over Notre Dame. So I don't think that they need help from Notre Dame or a bunch of other teams. I think if they basically win their conference with 1 loss, they'll be favored. They could possibly kick out Cincinnati, but again, we would have to watch and see what happens with the SEC championship, what happens here between all these teams in the Big 12. So, but Oklahoma State's a good team, and they could make a push here in the final 2 games. Man, Oklahoma has a lot of questions. Not Oklahoma State. I just did that team. Oklahoma. Oklahoma has to win against Oklahoma State, and then the Big 12 championship, which will likely be a rematch of Oklahoma State. So they gotta win against Oklahoma State twice. In that situation, maybe Oklahoma gets in. Here's the thing about Oklahoma. All the games this season were really close. So they were basically like a Cincinnati team. But the fact that Oklahoma has a loss with it. So the question is, does a 1-loss Oklahoma team get in without any help? Maybe. I think possibly that they would get in. So, but we would have to see about that, see how the playoff committee looks at that. So, yeah, Oklahoma has to win out. Likely 2 games against Oklahoma State. Kind of reminds me of the Cincinnati-Memphis thing back in 2019, where Cincinnati had to play Memphis twice. So, yeah, Oklahoma have to win out. Now, finally, I'm going to give my playoff prediction. So, number 1, I have Georgia. I think that they'll win against Alabama. Georgia is just overall dominant on defense, though they can absolutely stop Alabama. Number 2 is Ohio State. Until something happens in the game, I don't see anything happening. I think Ohio State will win against them, and this year the West isn't that strong, so I think that they'll win against either Wisconsin or Iowa. I don't think Minnesota has a chance. Number 3, I have Cincinnati. I think that looking at it, Cincinnati will begin undefeated. I think that having Notre Dame there is definitely a boost. So if you have Notre Dame still in the top like 5 or 6, it definitely helps because you can say, hey, look, you can't drop us at 5. Notre Dame is there. So, yeah, Cincinnati, number 3. Number 4 is Oklahoma State. I think that Oklahoma State will win the Big 12 championship. I think that they'll win against Oklahoma and then either win against Oklahoma again or they will be playing Baylor. If Baylor wins in the Big 12 championship. So Oklahoma State, number 4. So in this prediction, that would put Georgia against Oklahoma State, Ohio State versus Cincinnati. So your first two left out would be Alabama and Notre Dame, I believe. Yeah, Notre Dame and Alabama would be the first two left out, and then you would have Oklahoma and the team up north sitting probably at 7 and 8. So you can probably make a 8-team playoff, and it'd be pretty interesting this year. But anywho, Ohio State versus Cincinnati, Georgia versus Oklahoma. First, let's go over Georgia and Oklahoma State. I think Georgia will win that game. I haven't seen many Oklahoma State games, but I mean, it's so hard to pick anyone to beat Georgia. You can maybe make a slight case for Ohio State winning against them, but I don't think so. So Georgia advances, and then out of Ohio State, Cincinnati, I think Ohio State wins. I think Cincinnati is good, but Ohio State this year with their offense, they can't be stopped. And no matter how hard Cincinnati tries with their 2 NFL cornerbacks and stuff with Garner and Kobe Bryant, I don't think that they can cover 4 NFL guys, which is basically what Ohio State has now with wide receivers. I mean, they got Olave, Wilson, they got Njigba, Harrison. They got a lot of guys, and some of them are probably going to the NFL. Well, most of them are probably going to the NFL. So I have Ohio State winning that game. And then in the championship game, which would be against Georgia and Ohio State, I have Georgia favored by 4.5. I think, I don't know what the point spread would be if Georgia and Ohio State would play right now neutral field. I feel like it would maybe be a score or 2 favored for Georgia. I would say maybe 8 to 10 points. But I think that it's going to be a lot less than that once we get down to the nitty-gritty of it all. I think Georgia's favored by 4.5, so I'd look for either a field goal win or a touchdown win from Georgia if that game happens. Well, that's all for me. This was pretty interesting. I thought, this college football season is pretty insane. I want to go over these teams and see what the path for the playoff is. And, hopefully you guys liked it. And we'll see what happens past these last 2 weeks, because I think it will be pretty crazy and stuff. So, happy Thanksgiving. I recorded this on a Wednesday, so you either see this before, during, or after Thanksgiving. But anyway, happy Thanksgiving. And we will See you guys later. Like and subscribe, comment, what your opinions are, and we will see you guys later.